This is Jocko Podcast number 111 with Echo Charles and me, Jocko Willink. Good evening, Echo.
Good evening.
So, almost 2 years ago, I had a guy on the podcast by the name of Jody Mitic. And we ended up talking for so long that we actually turned one podcast into two podcasts. The first one was a review of his book, which had just come out. It was called Unflinching: The Making of a Canadian Sniper. And then we did a second podcast right after that. That was just us talking and discussing some more of the details of where his life had gone since that book had come out. And those podcasts are number 24 and number 25. And if you haven't listened to those yet, just stop here, go back and listen to them first. And in those podcasts, we discussed Jody's early life and how he ended up in the military and his sniper training and his two deployments to Afghanistan and the events of January 11th, 2007, when during an operation, he hit a landmine and lost both of his legs below the knee. And from there, he struggled to stay alive, but he did, and he made it back to Canada, where he then struggled to recover from his injuries, and then he struggled to adapt to his new life, and along the way he struggled to overcome addiction to pain medications that had been given to him so freely. But he did overcome those struggles and made a new life and wrote a book and got elected as a member of the city council of the city of Ottawa. And he continued to raise his young girls and take care of them. And by all accounts, we're talking about a model citizen. In fact, I'd go so far as to say a model human being. But things aren't always as they appear. And although Jody looked to be doing great by any measure behind that public persona, the struggle continued. And I saw a glimpse of it when Jody came down to be on the podcast. I first noticed it when I made reservations for Jody at a hotel by my house. And I just got a nice little hotel nearby me so I could pick him up easy and didn't think much of it. I gave him the hotel information, and then a couple days later he called me up and said he needed to transfer to a different hotel because the hotel that I had made reservations at didn't have handicap accessible rooms. And of course I felt like a jerk. But at the same time I didn't really understand, because I'd seen all these video clips of Jody walking around and actually running around, and he'd gotten second place in this TV show called The Amazing Race, where he's doing all these different challenges, and I saw pictures of him and videos of him running and driving cars and even riding motorcycles, driving motorcycles. So clearly there was something that I didn't understand that was going on, and maybe he wasn't as mobile as I thought he was. And when I went to pick him up at the airport, I wasn't really sure what to expect. I didn't know if he was going to be in a wheelchair. I didn't know if he was going to need help getting around. And as I drove through the pickup area looking for him, he wasn't hard to spot. He was standing at the curb, big beast, over 6 feet tall, and he walked over to the car with confidence, when with really zero indication that he was walking on two prosthetic legs. And, so we recorded the podcast afternoon, and it took forever. It was like 5 hours or 6 hours, and then we got done with that, and we went and grabbed steak. And the next day, he said, hey, can you give me a tour of San Diego? Can you show me, some of the sights around here? And so we did that. And I took him down to the Buds compound where the SEAL training is, and then I took him to the SEAL teams, and we went to the USS Midway, the aircraft carrier museum, and we were walking all over that, and then he wanted to go down to the beach town where I live in, so we walked around there, and it was awesome. And he was enjoying it, being down from the cold, frozen tundra of Canada. And as we got towards the end of the day, Jody started walking a little bit slower. And I noticed on his face he had a look of discomfort, right? That you could see he was trying not to really reveal it, but it was there. And then finally he said, can we sit down for a minute? These things start to hurt after a while. And he's pointing down at his legs. And I said, of course, yeah, no problem, man. So we sat down for a little while, and he recovered a little bit, and then we got up and we walked a little bit more. And then he said, hey, man, can we sit down again? And I said, yeah, man, of course. So then we sat down for a little while, and then when he got up again, he said, hey, can we just head back to your house and maybe sit around there for a little while? These things they're starting to hurt pretty good right now. The skin wears off, and it starts to bleed, and, it doesn't feel good, man. And I said, yeah, brother, no problem. So we headed back to my house, and we went up on the deck, and we sat there and just kind of hung out and talked, and it became clear to me something that I did know from my other friends that have been wounded badly, that it's a lot harder than it looks. It isn't the bionic man, and it's hard to adapt. The intermingling of human flesh with mechanical parts is not a natural thing. It's not a smooth thing. It's a battle. And it's a battle that's hard for us to perceive from the outside, but it's a battle that takes place every minute of every day, usually behind the scenes, privately. Because as soldiers, as Marines, these men learn to suffer and bear their burdens silently and without complaints. And it was here at my house that Jody explained to me why he needed a handicapped accessible room. He said, yeah, man, I get home and I got to take my legs off. And then I got to crawl to the bathroom to use the toilet, and I got to crawl to get in the shower, and I need those little handles to pull myself up. It's a struggle. And Jody suffered and struggled, again, not outwardly, not in public, but alone. He pressed on, and we kept in touch over the last couple of years, text messages and what's going on, and did you see this, and I sent you that. And I watched as Jody continued on his journey of his life, and it's awesome to watch. And he got back to Canada, and he started a podcast, and he continued with his political career, and he wrote another best-selling book called Everyday Heroes. And from a distance, everything appeared to be going great. But again, things aren't always what they seem. And behind all that, Jody was struggling. And a couple months ago, I got a text, a simple text from Jody, and it read, "Bro, the enemy outflanked me." Now, in military terms, that's about as bad as it gets. It means the enemy has attacked your weakness. It means the enemy has the upper hand. It means you have lost momentum in the battle. And it means you could very likely be overrun. And being overrun means that you're going to get killed. And I could see from that text that Jody was at war again, not on the battlefield, but in his life. But Jody's a soldier. And Jody fought back because that's what soldiers do. And a little while later, he sent another text that read, "I'm finally turning into the ambush and starting to fight through." He attacked the problems. He's back on track again, back on the path, and came down to visit me. And after talking to him a little bit and discussing what he's been through, I asked him if he would come on and talk about it, so other people, not just veterans, but everyone that struggles, all of us, can learn from what he's been through and what he's overcome. So here we are once again. And with that, Jody,
Jocko,
welcome back to the podcast.